Hello everyone, welcome back to Namma Laex Bangalore presents current issue of the day. Today we are going to discuss a bill which has been a point of contention in our parliament. The bill is SHANTHI bill. The topic name is SHANTHI Bill 2025, reforming India's nuclear energy governance. What is this SHANTHI? SHANTHI is a short form for sustainable harnessing and advancement of nuclear energy transforming India. So just see the name itself. One is sustainable harnessing and advancement of what? Advancement of nuclear energy. For what? For transforming India. So that is the short form for SHANTHI bill. So in today's video, we'll discuss why this is a point of contention, why this is a point of contention, what are the provisions, and which previous laws is it going to replace. Okay, so what is the relevance for UPSC? It is relevance for the GS paper 2 as well as GS paper 3 and also for the interview. And we'll discuss why it is in news. Why is it in news? It is in news because the bill was recently introduced in parliament and there was a debate because for the first time in over 70 years, for the first time in over 7 decades, the power generation under the nuclear energy is being provided to private entities as well as foreign entities, which ultimately means that the monopoly of NPCIL, that is National Power Corporation India Limited, is going to be ending. So that is why it is a point of contention as well. Why are we allowing private entities into critical infrastructure or critical energy or such a national security energy production? So that is the issue and that is the points. We will discuss what are the provisions and what are the previous acts and also discuss the background. First, let us discuss the background. So what is the background? In India, the Nuclear Energy Framework started with Atomic Energy Act of 1962. What does this act basically do is it established complete state monopoly over the nuclear energy, and the entity that was looking after this complete nuclear energy of the state monopoly was NPCIL. It became the sole entity for nuclear power generation, ensuring strategic control. But what it ultimately led is it led to limiting capital as well as technological diversification. Since it was under the complete control of state monopoly, the investment that used to be coming from the privatization or private companies got limited, and the technological diversification that would have happened from the foreign entities that got curbed. So one of the act was Atomic Energy Act of 1962. This is going to be replaced by SHANTHI bill, and there is another act which deals with nuclear energy liability, that is civil liability for the nuclear damage of 2010. What happened in 2008 to 2010 was there was a landmark agreement between India and US over the civil nuclear deal. This was done between Indian government under the Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and by the government of USA under the presidency of George Bush. Post this civil nuclear deal, this civil liability for the Nuclear Damage Act 2010, what it did was it introduced stringent liability. Stringent liability on who? On suppliers as well as operators. Previously, the liability was mainly under operators. So, suppliers had very less liabilities, but this CLND Act imposed supplier liability alongside the operator liability. What it basically did was, since the liability was more, it increased the risk of investment in nuclear energy. When there is higher risk, what happens? Obviously, the investment in these aspects goes decreasing, which resulted in deterring the global suppliers as well as stalling the investments. So this SHANTHI bill aims to reduce this liability on the supplier and operators so that investment can happen. And the third thing is, what were the persistent challenges which necessitated the SHANTHI bill? The persistent challenges were investment stagnation because of the prior regimes, supplier reluctance because of the Liability Act, project delays, regulatory opacity, and uranium supply constraints. All these hindered India's energy expansion. Despite the growing energy demands, we keep hearing in order to achieve development or Vikasit Bharat status, India requests some amount of electricity, some amount of energy, but we are not able to achieve that because of the various constraints which I mentioned. So the objective of SHANTHI bill is to address all these persistent challenges and the hurdles which were created by the previous statutory acts. So let us discuss the objectives. First and foremost objective of the SHANTHI bill is to modernize nuclear governance. How? It does modernize the nuclear governance by updating the archaic legal frameworks. The 1962 framework was necessary during the context of 1962 because under the Nehru government, Indian government wanted to portray India as a socialist government. So that act was very necessary, and India was also very nascent stage. So it was necessary. But fast forward to 70 years, the geopolitics, the energy needs, and all the environment is changing. So now time is to update the archaic legal framework to reflect the contemporary technological advancements. First is to reflect the contemporary technological advancements and global best practices in nuclear regulation and the safety. So aim is to align with these two. One is technological advancement as well as global best practices in nuclear regulation and safety. And what is the second important objective? Second is mobilize the private capital. Aim is to attract domestic and international investments to bridge the gap. How much is the gap? That is around 15 lakh crore rupees funding gap is required for the capacity expansion. This gap can be bridged by the private participation or the foreign entity participation. Next is enable advanced technologies, facilitating deployment of small modular reactors, generation 4 reactors and other cutting edge nuclear innovations that are happening elsewhere. Okay, one of the major limitation with respect to nuclear energy was that setting up a nuclear reactor or setting up a nuclear plant was capital intensive and it was very land intensive. So an alternative for these traditional nuclear reactors was the small modular reactors. The intensiveness of capital is also less and also land is also less needed. So, but India was lacking in that technology. Now with the Shanti bills and with the collaboration of the foreign entities, we can fast forward with the small model reactors. Next, aligning with the climate goals. So Prime Minister Modi, one of the important aims of Prime Minister Modi is the Panchamitra, and one of the goal under Panchamitra is to achieve net zero status by 2070. In order to achieve the net zero status by 2070, we need clean energies. So this aim of Shanti Bill is to scale clean baseload nuclear power to complement the renewable energy sources. So not only the nuclear energy but also other renewable energy sources are working in tandem. This bill is just complementing the climate goals. Okay, now which laws are going to be replaced by this Shanti bill? First is Atomic Energy Act, second is CLND Act, then regulatory frameworks. So there will be these three changes. First we will discuss with respect to Atomic Energy Act. The key limitation of this act was there was absolute PSU monopoly, that is NPCIL's complete monopoly was there and no private entity or private participation was allowed. But the Shanti bill is liberalized the participation for private Indian as well as foreign entities, so that there will be more private participation, there will be more investment. Second is Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage Act. Here it provided supplier liability as well as operator liability. What it did was it created investment barriers and increased the risk, which discouraged the global suppliers. What is Shanti bill doing? Shanti bill is only providing operator only liability model, which is aligned with the international conventions. So now the suppliers are going to be encouraged to invest in India. Next is AERB, that is the regulatory framework, that is Atomic Energy Regulatory Board, lacked statutory backing previously, which resulted in regulatory uncertainty. But now under the Shanti bill, this AERB is going to be given a statutory backing, which will provide a parliamentary accountability. So next, private sector participation. What is going to change under the Shanti bill? It will result in private Indian companies, joint ventures between the foreign and Indian companies, and then foreign firms and NPCILs. These will be the four entities which will be allowed or involved in nuclear power generation in India. So this bill permits Indian companies, joint ventures, foreign firms to build, operate, own as well as decommission nuclear power plants. So this is a multi-stakeholder approach and it is aimed at accelerating the capacity addition, introducing the competitive efficiencies and leveraging the global investment which is provided now, and also leveraging the global expertise and as well as maintaining regulatory oversight. So now the question is, what remains with the state? What remains with the state strategic control? So state retains certain aspects. One is nuclear cycle, nuclear fuel cycle, second is heavy water production, and the third is non-proliferation obligations. All these things will be managed by the government of India only. These will remain under the state control. Under the non-proliferation obligations, whatever the commitments that the India has under the international frameworks, including IAEA, remains strictly under state controls, which is upholding nuclear security architecture. Second is radioactive management. The disposal, the storage and the long-term management of nuclear waste is going to remain under the government responsibilities, which is going to ensure public safety and environmental protection, because who else is a better protector of the citizenry than the government, than the state. And apart from this, the nuclear fuel cycle. that is the complete control over the uranium processing, mining, enrichment and the fuel remains exclusively under the government entities so that it can ensure non-generation compliance, okay, non-proliferation compliance and heavy water production. Normally heavy water is one of the important ingredient in the pressurized heavy water reactors, so the production of the heavy water is going to remain under the state control only. Okay, next. So how does this bill strengthens nuclear regulation? It strengthens by providing AERB a statutory backing. So the Atomic Energy Regulatory Board will grant statutory status, which is going to end its dependence on the executive orders. Now it has statutory backing, which transformation ensuring the regulatory independence as well as accountability to the parliament. So what will be the key benefits of this statutory backing? It will provide regulatory independence from the government or the executive influence. Second is strengthened safety assurance mechanisms and the protocols. Also improved investor confidence through transparent oversights. And finally, the parliamentary scrutiny ensuring the public accountability. So this is everything about SHANTHI bill. Now let us understand the revised nuclear liability regime. With respect to civil liability nuclear defense, nuclear damage act of 2010 and the SHANTHI bill of 2025, supplier liability under the Sale and Additive Act was there, it was joint and there were several liabilities. But under the SHANTHI bill, the supplier liability is completely removed. Generally, the suppliers or most of the times will be foreign entities. So they will have no liability and this will increase the investment. Second is the operator liability, which will result in unlimited financial exposure for the operators. But in the SHANTHI bill, though the operator liability is retained, but it is capped based on the reactor capacity, based on the reactor capacity. Next is the liability basis for the operator in the Sale and Additive Act was based on the actual damage assessment post the disaster, post the hazard. But here the liability basis is predefined as per the installed capacity. So what will be the impact of the new SHANTHI bill? It will result in alignment with the international conventions and also attracts investment. So this is a paradigm shift from the damage based to the capacity based liability assessment. This is the fundamental concern of the global suppliers and financial institutions. This is going to unlock billions of rupees, billions of dollars in investment to India. So finally, the fact sheet. So the key ready takeaways from this act was, from the prelims, this is going to replace Atomic Energy Act and Sale and Act and provides AARB with the statutory status. And then there will be Atomic Disputes Tribunal, very important. Atomic Disputes Tribunals is going to be established for the expedited dispute resolutions. In the mains dimension, it will change the liability trade-off, the liability debate, the trade-off between attracting investment and the principle of polluter pays. And from the interview one-liners, one of the major criticism of the SHANTHI bill is that it is wholesale privatization of nuclear energy. But you can support this bill saying that SHANTHI bill represents structural reform but not a wholesale privatization. This liberalizes generation, that is nuclear generation, while maintaining the state control over the fuel cycle, waste management, and which is going to balance economic imperatives with the national security. That is the need of the hour. That is economic imperatives as well as national security. Both have to be balanced and the national SHANTHI bill is doing that. So this is everything you need to know about SHANTHI bill. If you like the video, then please hit the like button, comment on it and also share with your friends. For more topics like this, comment in your topic which needs to be discussed in this manner. With this, I will end the video. Jai Hind, Jai Karnataka.